Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Today is Friday, July 21st, 2023. Happy Friday, everyone. Lots going on in the news. We're seeing a lot of the systems being exposed for the corruption, but what I'm seeing is a real shift in the energy right now. And what I'm seeing is people are starting to look at what it means to be decent, noble, ethical, and get back in touch with their own value system. So what I'd like to do today is talk about integrity. And it's interesting because some of these words we know, but what we've lost and has happened over time sometimes is we lose touch with the meaning, what the meaning of these words mean, right? So I wrote some notes about integrity, and I look at integrity as getting like right. We often hear the word integrity, but what does it mean to act with integrity? It means your walk and your talk are aligned. You say what you mean and you mean what you say. You know, you're coming from a place of integrity. You may ask yourself, does your outer behavior reflect your inner values? And it doesn't matter if the answer is yes or no. It doesn't matter if you're a decent person and you esteem properly from inside, or whether you're insecure. It doesn't matter. Are they aligned? Because what we're starting to see is we're starting to look for whether a person's walk and talk align. When you know that your outer values or reflect your inner values, you will act with integrity. You will know when you're not acting in integrity. Are you leading by example as determined by what your purpose is or your beliefs in life? Are you walking your talk? And sometimes people will use the word religion, right? And they say that they act in a faith, but then they turn around and they're petty and they're insecure and they're manipulative behind the scenes. Well, that's not getting close to God. So you might call yourself that you're getting close to God because you join a religious group. And I'm not going to pick on any one group, but when you can't have two people that identify as a religious within a religious group who believe the same thing and act the same thing, then that's not really what gives you integrity, and that's not what you can align to, because there's so many different interpretations of it. And what I'm finding is it all has to come from your heart, right? When you honor your word, when you do what you say you're going to do, you act with integrity. To honor your word is to be dependable and commendable. And I know a lot of people think they're going to do something and don't do it, or it's easier just to cop out or come up with an excuse to not do something. And yeah, that's okay when you're learning to set boundaries. Sometimes you end up having to do that just until you can figure out how to have an honest conversation and say no when you mean no. But that's a big one when you do what you say you're going to do. When you stay aligned with your values, when you commit to things that don't go against what you stand for internally, you act with integrity. So what I find is a lot of people, we've been led astray through the education system. It doesn't matter what different aspects of society we've been led astray through. But what I find is people don't know how to define what their values even are. And I know I wrote this book back in 2016. But what's interesting, in chapter 2, I list some values that are commendable, but it's not a matter of just choosing one. It's not like you're shopping and picking up a t-shirt or a pair of jeans off a shelf. You look at it and find which ones resonate with you, but why do they resonate with you? And it's quite an interesting exercise, and it even gives you opportunities to go back and double check your work to see why you identify with those values. Because what we're finding is that middle ground right now. It's incredible watching some of the men out there. Jim Caviezel, he's leading with integrity. He's actually saying what he means what he says. He understands the risks he's taking, and that's pretty sad. We live in a society when you stand for something that has integrity, you take risks. And it's not just the people at the top that are causing the pain and suffering. It's all throughout the system. It doesn't matter what role you play. If you don't have a good heart, you're not coming from integrity. If you're willing to cause conflict or pain onto another person so you can get ahead, whether financially or within an organized structure like an employment or something like that, you're not acting with integrity. So are you willing to be wrong? So having integrity, it doesn't mean that it's so strict that you can never make a mistake. But if you make a mistake, how do you handle it? When you know you're wrong, do you apologize for it? And the idea, though, if you apologize for a mistake you made, that you learn from the mistake and you don't commit that behavior or say that thing again or whatever it is. That's why it's so important that if you do make mistakes, don't be so hard on yourself, but look at it and say, wow, I can't believe I just said that, or can't believe I just did that, or whatever it is. And it doesn't mean you're not going to have negative thoughts sometime, or kind of do a little on somebody in your mind. But the idea is that you don't act on it and you don't cause another person strife so that you can get ahead or feel that you're in charge, what have you, right? So you want to learn from your mistakes. There's no shame in making mistakes unless it's brutal and it really caused another person harm or transgressed on another. But to learn from your mistakes is what is so important. And that's how you also get back in touch with your internal values. When you know you said something or did something and it didn't feel good, and you just like, oh, I wish I could have taken that back. That's probably something that you've said or done that does go against your particular values. And this also helps you set your boundaries, because if you have a certain set of rules that you believe in being honest and you do your best, and yeah, people are trying to dupe you and you make mistakes and they try to shame or whatever just to get an upper hand, see it for what it is, but know that you don't have to be around those people anymore. Just block them out of your life. Just walk away from them if you have to. By establishing your values, you will set up the practice that you will find acceptable and the practices that you will find unacceptable. So they say that we live in a polarity, and I get that. But to see what's sacred in life, you have to see what is not sacred in life. And a lot of the abuses we're seeing right now, we're seeing a lot of kids being attacked on multiple levels. They're passing laws now saying you can't mutilate their genitals. You think it's about time we do that. But we're starting to see what is really wrong, because when you see what's sacred about life, then you can see what's not sacred and what is considered abusive or traumatic. And it was interesting. I was watching Donna Eden. She's doing a series on trauma. And the word trauma, I realized when it started coming into fashion. So they don't call it abuse, they call it trauma. But trauma from being in an accident of some sort is different than a trauma of somebody intentionally causing you harm and going out of their way, because that makes that trauma a betrayal. And what she's outlining in this course is that all trauma comes from abuse. And we're never going to hear this from the mental health industry. And I was watching a 7-hour presentation on SRA. This was in the UK. They had to hide the location, of course, because they would have been interrupted or hurt. But one of them was talking about false memory syndrome. Do you remember when psychiatry came out with that? So the victims all had false memories. They're starting to find the literature to debunk that. So in that example, the psychiatry industry intentionally lied so that they can keep abusing children. So why would you start turning to these people when they have no integrity? If they don't understand how the human condition of consciousness relates with abuse, why are you turning to them? And I'm not saying they're all bad. I don't know, and I don't care. People have to decide for themselves who they're going to turn to for getting help. But when you go, you've experienced some sort of an abuse, and you go to the professionals and they say, no, it's all in your head. What do you think that does to the psyche of the person who was abused? Like, we live in an ugly society in the West, and I don't believe we're going back to the old, because the old actually perpetuated and fed the abuse that is happening on our planet, whether emotional, physical, mental, spiritual, sexual. That's how it was. The old system was designed by the abusers to protect the abusers, and that's why they never look to see the behavior of a person, if that behavior was intentionally wrong. And it's okay if they lie, because if it was offside and they had to hide it, so we all know I'm talking the P word, if they have to hide it, they know it's wrong. And what they're trying to do now is push it on the kids and make it the kids' idea, so that they don't have to come out, and they can come out and do it openly. But they're putting it on the kids who are not old enough to be able to understand what's even going on. These people are just ugly on the inside. And unfortunately, I think there's a lot of them in our society. But the idea is, if we can see what the abuses are, we can see what acting with integrity is. And somebody who doesn't have integrity, who's unscrupulous, who has no morals, they can't sit there and look you in the eye and tell you they have integrity, because you're going to see right through it. They have to come up with another game to trick you. So I just think it's really interesting times we live in. So avoid people who don't act with integrity. So that's easier said than done, especially people change over time. So maybe you're within a group of people, and then all of a sudden somebody gets insecure or jealous and starts attacking somebody else because maybe they want control of somebody in the group. Who knows what the agenda is? But just stay away from the people who don't act with integrity. And it doesn't mean the people around them have done anything wrong, but the idea is we're starting to see it for what it is. And the people who don't have integrity, they have to be on crack if they honestly think we can't see their games, right? So be present and go about your day-to-day task. By being present, you can be a solid influence for others, as you know what happens inside you and your surroundings. So sometimes what happens is, when you know who you are, so that's what a lot of integrity is about, knowing what you stand for and what you won't stand for. When you know who you are, you can see a behavior and go, yeah, no, that's not acceptable. And it doesn't matter if it's not your business. It doesn't matter. If somebody is causing harm to another person, you can speak up and say not acceptable. And the example I'm going to use today, I just saw that Trump is going to be, his trial starts next summer, just before the election, about the boxes. I think it was about the boxes and the information and disclosing information. So they do that, what, 4 or 5 months before the election starts so that they can sway public opinion. Pretty funny, actually. But the woman who's doing this, how much integrity does she have? And the answer is not a lot. I was also watching another video, and it was talking about the day that George Bush, I think it was George Bush Sr.'s funeral. And what was really interesting, they were talking about all the envelopes that were received in the audience and what this person has connected to. And I didn't make this connection, but all the envelopes were given to the wives because the women are the ones who are running the show. And they tell us we live in a patriarchy. No, we don't. Most men are scared shitless of women because they've been taught for the last how many generations that women are the victims, and some are, there's no doubt about it. But some of the perpetrators and many of the perpetrators in charge are the females. So if we want integrity within ourselves and within the circles that we interact in, doesn't matter if it's through an institution, like a group, whatever, we have to ask for it on the greater scale as well. And part of the integrity is recognizing that it's the women doing the DQ story hours. It's the women in the schools, the teachers and the librarians who are promoting this garbage with the kids, with the gender stuff. And we have to start calling some of these women out. And don't get me wrong, some of them are just so ugly, they don't care. They will pull out every stop to try to knock you down. But the idea is that you stand in your integrity and you say enough. I am so impressed with the men who are coming out right now. Trump just came out and watched Sound of Freedom, and he actually commended the video. So we're going to find, so we need the men to lead. We need that. And if we want men to lead, they have to know that we're going to support them and trust them, but we still come in and play our role. And we play sometimes a supporting role, sometimes a leading role. It doesn't mean we don't do both. But the idea is when we come from integrity, we can make the right choices, and the right choices need to be made for the younger generations right now. So just to close up, people with integrity take responsibility for their actions. They're accountable for their thoughts, feelings, and beliefs, and know others are accountable for theirs as well. We're still seeing a lot of this just starting to break right now when people are starting to talk about the narcissist. And there's one arm that says, oh, don't mess with the narcissist. They don't like it. And there's another one that says, too bad, we're fed up, but we're not going to fight you. What we're going to do is stand up into our own integrity, our own power. We're going to trust ourselves over you or anybody else. So that's kind of where all this is going. They know, and they know others are accountable for their own. When we are responsible for our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs, we are acting in an emotionally mature manner. And that's what our society suffers from the most, emotional immaturity. All the little games, all the little manipulations, all the sneaky little things. That is how our society has got ahead. And I think that's part of the Satanism or Luciferianism, whatever you want to call it. That's the between good and evil is the deception, the betrayal. It's the taking from somebody else. It's demoralizing people. That's what it's about, making somebody feel energetically low, that they don't like themselves. And that's what we're seeing is the true game behind good and evil. When we're responsible for our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs, we are acting in an emotionally mature manner. There is no way around it. And in that comes integrity. And again, we're starting to see who has it and who doesn't. Who cares who doesn't? Just start to see it for what it is and walk away if you can. And start acting aligned with your own value system. And like I said, chapter 2 is all about setting it up, and it shows you how to test your values to see if they're important to you. One of my values is protecting children. And no matter what happens, in what direction I try to go in, it always comes back that if something hits the news, I'm back all over this. And it would be nice in my mind if we could create a society of children who didn't have to get over their childhoods. That's what I'd like to see the adults. And a lot of things are missing. And I think the roadmap is missing of how to grow up to be a decent person. And a friend of mine, a very dear friend of mine, told me that one time, she said, you know, they say children don't come with the owner's manual. What if they did? What if that was hidden from us? Because children who are hurt and traumatized by abuse are easier to control. And I just watched a video clip of a mother talking to her daughter, and she asked her what confidence was, right? And the little girl said, believing in myself. And she says, what's integrity? And she says, doing the right thing when nobody's looking. And I can't remember what the third one was, but what she's teaching her daughter is how to have trust in herself. And this is what, you don't need an educator to teach you that. You can go in right from the beginning and teach your children what it means to have strong values and what to do, what feels right. Show them how to feel in their body if something doesn't feel right. But it's really important to the parents that the parents don't manipulate the children or think that it's funny when they demean the children. It's really important that, I don't know, this isn't going to be a one size fits all, but it's going to be one of those, when you feel it's right, you're going to stand up and do the right thing. And if you've made mistakes with your children, stop doing what you're doing, but figure out what you do need to do to help them have appropriate levels of self-esteem, because that's what's missing with a lot of these children. I think this is what's missing with these educators who are out to lunch. Have we ever asked any of them what do they love about being women? Because I bet you all those teachers who are promoting this gender change, they hate themselves. And I can see why, but I shouldn't say I can see why, but this is what they're doing, but they're not taking it out on themselves. They're taking it out on the children by getting the children to hurt themselves, because they don't turn it inward, they turn it outward and hurt somebody else. Children deserve better in our society. And hopefully that's going to change. But anyways, I thought I'll just maybe leave it there. I just wanted to touch on integrity, what it is, how to know whether you have it or not. If anybody's interested in this, I can send them a copy of what the notes I wrote. But we're starting to see who doesn't have integrity, and most people are getting sick of it. But if all the institutions can act with integrity, then start doing it within yourself and let them fall away. If they can't figure out what it takes to make a healthy human being, then what are we listening to them for? If they don't know how to get what's right in life, what are you listening to them for? If they can't tell the difference, and an example is a police officer, my neighbor, I was telling him that the mental health industry has a 2-day course now that they can tell who has mental illness, and they can diagnose it, and they're putting these women in the back of the cruiser. And he looked at me and I'm like, you haven't heard this yet? And he, no. And I'm like, do you understand what mental illness, what causes it? They're not trained on any of this. So he's going to put this honey in the back of his cruise. I'm not saying him, I don't know whether him or not, but these people are going to put these women in who are going to come in and diagnose you, but you don't even know what you're being diagnosed for. These people do not act with integrity. And if they can't clean up their own shop, what do we need them for? And I'm not saying defund them. I'm just saying we need to look at why they aren't getting it right. What's their roadmap? What is their procedures manual for understanding what it means to be healthy? And if we're not seeing that, again, what are we paying them for? So I hope you found this helpful. If you care to, press hit the like button and subscribe, share this with people. And if you know somebody's being set up by somebody else and they're just little head games, share it with them so that they can understand what's going on, and that they can see that that person is not acting in integrity. And it's not your job to figure out why. It's not your problem to figure out why they're fucked up. Not your problem at all. But the idea is that you stand in your own integrity, you see it for what it is, and you be the best version of yourself. So thank you very much, everybody. Have a great Friday. Take good care. Bye.